What the most important turning point in this war wasn't a massive breakthrough everyone could see, but a carefully planned operation that unfolded almost unnoticed. Sometimes wars do not change because of one dramatic battle. Sometimes they change because one side quietly proves it has found a better way to fight. If that is what happened on the Southern Front, historians may eventually look back on this operation as something far more significant than another shift in the front line. Before we continue, if you enjoy clear and -depth military analysis without the noise, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and share this video with someone who wants to understand how modern warfare is actually evolving. Now let's begin. For much of the past year, the fighting in southern Ukraine appeared locked in place. Defensive belts stretched 4 miles. Artillery exchanges became routine. Small tactical gains were often measured in hundreds of meters rather than kilometers. To outside observers, the battlefield seemed frozen. Many analysts began describing the conflict as a prolonged war of attrition, where neither side could generate enough momentum to fundamentally alter the strategic picture. But beneath that apparent stalemate, preparation never stopped. Modern offensives rarely begin with armored columns suddenly racing across open ground. They begin weeks, sometimes months earlier. Reconnaissance increases. Supply routes are quietly expanded. Reserve units are repositioned. Engineers study terrain. Electronic warfare teams begin shaping the battlefield long before the first assault troops move. That invisible phase of preparation is often where battles are truly won. Reports from multiple open sources suggested that, during late spring, Ukrainian forces were increasing activity across several sectors of the southern front. Rather than signaling an immediate attack, much of this activity appeared designed to improve battlefield awareness. Reconnaissance drones flew repeated observation missions. Engineers examined defensive obstacles. Artillery units refined target libraries. Every new observation added another layer to an increasingly detailed picture of Russian defensive positions. Modern warfare depends less on surprise alone than on information superiority. Knowing where command posts are located, understanding supply routes, tracking artillery positions, identifying communication nodes. All of these elements allow an attacking force to strike not only where defenses are strongest, but where they are most vulnerable. This reflects a broader trend seen throughout the conflict. Instead of relying solely on mass, both sides increasingly attempt to combine intelligence, precision fires, drones, electronic warfare, and highly mobile ground units into a single synchronized operation. The objective is no longer simply breaking through defensive lines. It is disrupting the entire decision-making process behind those lines. On the southern axis, geography makes every kilometer strategically important. The road and rail networks connecting occupied territory have long served as essential logistical corridors. Fuel, ammunition, replacement equipment, medical evacuation. Everything depends on transportation networks remaining open. Military planners throughout history have understood that logistics often determines the outcome of campaigns more reliably than battlefield heroics. An army can continue fighting after losing ground. It cannot continue fighting without supplies. For that reason, operations in southern Ukraine are frequently analyzed not only in terms of territory captured, but also in terms of pressure placed on transportation infrastructure and supply networks. Every advance changes the geometry of the battlefield. Artillery reaches farther. Drone reconnaissance covers more ground. Supply routes become increasingly exposed. Even relatively modest territorial gains can force defenders to relocate headquarters, reposition artillery, or establish entirely new logistical routes. Those adjustments consume time, resources, and personnel. Another notable feature of recent operations has been the growing emphasis on operational security. Modern battlefields are saturated with surveillance. Satellites monitor movement. Reconnaissance drones remain airborne for hours. Electronic intelligence can detect radio transmissions almost instantly. In this environment, remaining visible has become almost as important as remaining protected. Military units now spend enormous effort reducing electronic signatures. Radio discipline becomes critical. Vehicle movement is carefully timed. Camouflage techniques continue evolving. Even routine logistics can become targets if detected too early. The side that controls information often controls the tempo of battle. Weather can also become an unexpected force multiplier. Fog, cloud cover, heavy rain, or reduced visibility affect drone operations, artillery observation, and aerial reconnaissance. Throughout military history, commanders have often attempted to synchronize operations with environmental conditions whenever possible. Technology has transformed warfare, but nature continues to influence the battlefield in ways that no military can fully control. As reports of increased Ukrainian activity emerged, analysts debated whether these movements represented localized attacks or preparations for something larger. At the tactical level, successful offensives increasingly rely on relatively small assault groups rather than massive waves of infantry. Small, well-trained teams supported by drones, precision artillery, and electronic warfare can often create effects that once required far larger formations. Instead of attacking every defensive position directly, these units search for weak points. They bypass strongholds whenever possible. They isolate command centers, disrupt communications, target logistics. Only then do larger follow-on forces move forward to consolidate gains. This reflects one of the defining characteristics of modern combat. The objective is not simply destroying enemy forces. It is breaking the system that allows those forces to function. When command networks fail, when logistics slow, when reconnaissance disappears, even experienced units become significantly less effective. Whether this particular operation ultimately proves decisive remains uncertain. Wars rarely change because of a single engagement, but they do evolve through a series of operational adaptations. Each campaign reveals new strengths, new weaknesses, new lessons, and sometimes one operation demonstrates that an entirely different way of fighting has begun to emerge. If that is what happened on the Southern Front, then the real story is not how many kilometers were gained. The real story is how intelligence, planning, mobility, and coordination may be reshaping the battlefield in ways that extend far beyond a single offensive. Because in modern war, success often belongs not to the army with the largest force, but to the one that understands the battlefield first. One of the clearest patterns emerging from this campaign is that capturing territory may no longer be the primary objective. Instead, the real target is often the enemy's ability to sustain the fight. Military logistics has always been the hidden foundation of warfare. Every artillery battery requires ammunition. Every armored vehicle needs fuel. Every frontline unit depends on food, medical support, replacement equipment, and constant communication with higher headquarters. None of those systems operate independently. They form an interconnected network. Disrupt enough parts of that network, and even well-strained combat formations begin losing effectiveness long before they are physically destroyed. As white transportation corridors have become some of the most closely watched locations on the Southern Front. Railways, highways, bridges, supply depots, command centers. Each serves as a link in a much larger logistical chain. When pressure increases against those links, commanders face difficult choices. Reinforce one sector and weaken another. Move headquarters farther from the front, increasing response times. Commit reserves earlier than planned. Or accept greater operational risk. None of those options are ideal. This illustrates an important principle of modern warfare. The battlefield is no longer defined solely by where soldiers are fighting. It extends deep behind the front line into transportation infrastructure, communications networks, and command systems. As precision-guided weapons and long-range surveillance continue improving, the distance between the front and the rear becomes increasingly blurred. At the same time, unmanned systems continue changing the character of military operations. Drones are no longer used simply for reconnaissance. They help identify artillery positions, observe supply movements, correct indirect fire, monitor roads, search for engineering activity, and in many cases, they allow commanders to make decisions based on information that only minutes earlier would have been unavailable. The speed of decision-making has become almost as important as firepower itself. Whoever understands the battlefield first often gains the initiative. That advantage may last only hours, sometimes only minutes, but in modern combat, those minutes can determine the success or failure of an entire operation. Electronic warfare adds another layer to this contest. Both sides increasingly attempt to interfere with navigation systems, communications, and drone operations. Rather than destroying equipment outright, the objective is often to deny the opponent reliable information. Confusion can be nearly as valuable as destruction. A unit that cannot communicate efficiently may hesitate. A headquarters that loses situational awareness may delay critical decisions. And those delays create opportunities that a well-prepared opponent can exploit. This evolution reflects a broader transformation occurring across modern militaries. Instead of relying primarily on overwhelming numbers, many armed forces now emphasize integration. Intelligence, precision weapons, electronic warfare, engineers, infantry, armor, artillery, air support. Every element must function as part of a single system. The more closely those components are synchronized, the greater their overall effectiveness becomes. This is one reason military analysts continue paying close attention to operations in southern Ukraine. Regardless of the exact tactical outcomes, the conflict has become one of the world's largest laboratories for observing how 20-first century warfare continues to evolve. Lessons learned there are being studied far beyond Eastern Europe. Defense planners across NATO, military academies throughout Asia, strategic researchers in the Middle East, All are examining how drones, electronic warfare, logistics, and decentralized command structures are influencing battlefield performance. Future doctrine may be shaped as much by these observations as by the territorial changes themselves. There is also an important human dimension that should not be overlooked. Every offensive places enormous demands on the soldiers carrying it out. Planning may occur months in advance. Technology may provide extraordinary awareness. But ultimately, operations still depend on individuals making difficult decisions under extreme pressure. Engineers clearing obstacles. Drone operators monitoring targets for hours. Medical teams evacuating casualties. Logistics personnel moving supplies through contested areas. Commanders adapting to rapidly changing situations. Modern warfare remains deeply human, even as it becomes increasingly technological. Looking ahead, several questions remain unanswered. Can operational momentum be sustained over time? Will defensive adaptations reduce the effectiveness of current tactics? Can logistical pressure translate into lasting strategic advantage? Or will the conflict once again settle into another prolonged period of attrition? History suggests that both attackers and defenders constantly adapt. Every successful tactic eventually encounters a countermeasure. Every technological advantage encourages innovation on the other side. Military competition is rarely static. It is a continuous cycle of adaptation. That may be the most important lesson emerging from this campaign. The future of warfare isn't likely to belong exclusively to the largest armies or the most expensive equipment. Instead, it may favor those who integrate information mobility, precision logistics, and leadership more effectively than their opponents. The battlefield of today is no longer simply about firepower. It is about decision speed, operational flexibility, situational awareness, and the ability to transform information into action before the opponent can respond. Whether historians eventually identify this operation as a decisive turning point remains to be seen. Wars are rarely decided in a single week, but they are often shaped by moments that reveal how the nature of combat itself is changing. If the Southern Front has demonstrated anything, it is that modern military success increasingly depends on preparation long before the first shot is fired. The quiet work of intelligence gathering, the discipline of operational security, the coordination between multiple branches, the resilience of logistics. Those invisible factors frequently determine outcomes long before maps begin to change, and that may ultimately become the lasting significance of this campaign, not simply where the front line moved, but how the methods of modern warfare continue evolving in real time, offering lessons that military planners around the world will likely study for years to come.